All right, today we're really excited to bring you a special guest. Our guest today is Donn Swaby, who is a real Renaissance man. He was born and raised in Queens and graduated from the Boston University School of Theater Arts with a degree in acting. Donn has worked extensively in television, film, and theater, and for you soap opera fans out there, one of his most notable roles was as the original Chad Harris on NBC's soap opera Passions. And if you don't happen to watch the soaps, you may have caught one of his many guest starring roles on sitcoms and dramas like Judging Amy, Crossing Jordan, Half and Half, The Parkers, Surface, Monk, and Gigantic. Donn's love of theater has led him to write 5 screenplays and to a directorial debut in Sam Shepard's play Fool for Love, which he also co-produced. Donn has also been a contributor for the Huffington Post and has written for a women's alternative magazine called Melt.
Donn lives here in Los Angeles. His hobbies are hiking, live music. What instrument do you play?
My main instrument is guitar, but I also play keyboards and bass.
All right. Painting, reading, both fiction and nonfiction, volunteering as a reader to children via the Screen Actors Guild Book Pals program, and the Pencil Pal program, where he has helped students write their own biographies and monologues, and hanging out on the beach.
Hanging out
On the beach. Okay, so let's talk about your books. Your first book out was your Everything, Everywhere, all the time. I almost said all at once, but I didn't. Your Everything, Everywhere, all the time. That was your first picture book. Tell us about it and what inspired you to illustrate the book and get it out there.
Sure. That book first was inspired by the thought that I had when I was volunteering for now defunct, unfortunately, program at Screen Actors Guild, the Book Pals program. Now it's online. They've got these celebrities, reading books. But when I was going into the classrooms and reading books and falling in love, that's how I fell in love with It's Books Again and the whole kidlit world. I was also at the time really delving into quantum physics and just trying to, just really having fun going down that rabbit hole. And the thought occurred to me, it's like, I wonder if I would be able to teach quantum physics to kids or relate to them the idea of oneness, relate to them the idea that everything is connected in some way, that they're connected to each other, to the world, to nature. And that's literally how it started. And then I just thought of this child, and I thought of this child experiencing the world in some way. And then at some point, I think the idea came that he would sort of just become a part of whatever he was experiencing. And then that's when the idea for illustrations came in, because I also illustrated it. So I spent maybe about 4 to 5 months, almost a half a year, just on the verse, because it actually came out as a poem, as a rhyming verse, which, as you know, it has to be on point, it has to be very good, or it just sounds bad. It's like bad Shakespeare, where it's said incorrectly or the words are mispronounced, but like where it's just all nice and flowery, but it's not really not really saying anything, or the person's not connecting. So I wanted to make sure that the poem definitely on a technical level at least had the meter and all of that. So then I worked on the illustrations for about a good the rest of the year, for about another 6-7 months. I spent maybe just a couple of months just sketching characters until, and I'm sure if you talk to illustrators, they have a similar process of finding the character. And I remember the day of doodling and all these doodles, and finally like, oh, there he is, oh, okay, and he's got a big old afro, and okay, yeah, okay, that's him, that was him, and all of a sudden this kid, and my afro was never that big when I was a kid, but I that was from there. I then was able to do the illustrations, and as I said, worked on them for a long time, and that was a lot of fun. I mean, I used watercolor mostly, a lot of different mediums. It was on using sketchpad paper, but pencil and ink and colored pencil, pen, and watercolor, and it was a lot of fun just putting it all together. So I did submit it after that when I felt it was ready to publishers.
Because it was independently published.
Exactly.
First.
Because what happened is I didn't get any interest in somebody else publishing it, so I was like, well, after I don't know how many months of submitting, I was like, let me just see about publishing it myself. And at the time, Amazon had what's called CreateSpace, which is now something else. But CreateSpace was their sort of sister company that actually where they worked with people who self-publish. So I paid for that and designed the book. It came out. And ever since I've been, sharing it on either online, some bookstores, doing readings, whether it be at schools or libraries, and it's been a lot of fun actually sharing the book. I actually, as a musician, I made a song version because, of course, it was a poem. I'm like, oh, it's like a song. Oh, okay. So I wrote a song. And so, for example, I also perform the song when I do readings, or now if I actually have a couple of programs that I do for author visits, as you know. So for You're Everything Everywhere All the Time, that's for K through second grade, and I have a half an hour program where the song is included. It's a sort of a sing along at the end of the program, and there is no better gift from this book, the experience of sharing it with kids, than when I'm done and the kids are getting up and they're going, they're leaving the library or whatever, and they're still singing the song. They're still, or I'll get an email from a teacher or someone, months later or whatever. Oh, the kids, they're still singing your song, or they, that kind of a thing.
So more recently, you've launched a book, I'll Be Irie. Right? Do you have that?
It'll be Irie.
It'll be Irie. It'll be Irie, staying true to yourself. And the beautiful illustrations in this book are by Alejandra Barajas, and I hope I'm saying her name right. Tell us about this book.
Sure. So, It'll Be Irie is a book that was inspired by several things. Inspired by my parents, number one. Inspired by my parents, who are both from the island of Jamaica, and my mom came to the U.S. to Jamaica, Queens, in fact, when she was like 15 or 14. My dad came in his early 20s to New York, and then they met. And so I had an idea that I really don't remember I wish I could, the genesis of it. Like, what was the initial thought? But I just remember, anyway, this idea eventually coming from somewhere for a story about a boy who's moving to America from Jamaica. And I had this idea that this boy wanted to be very American, more American than American. And I think that was really what it then inspired me to then really develop a story about this kid. Because I was like, I just saw this kid, thinking I'm going to be, the best American. I'm going to impress everybody, because I love America so much, and I just want to, be there. And so that's how it developed. And then I started bringing to my Kidlit group, of which Andrea is a part, which of course, and any writer who's listening to this, watching this right now, I can't stress enough how helpful it is to have other writers who are there to help you improve by actually giving you impartial feedback, which you need. It's great to go to your mom or to go to your spouse or your best friend, but you
sometimes.
do need people. Yeah, sometimes not, right?
People who know the craft. Those are
right. Exactly.
Your best allies.
You need people who know about writing, and specifically to your genre. So if you're writing for children, you want to find people who are also writing for children versus adults, for example. But yeah, so I was bringing in the story, getting great feedback from them, and revising it and so forth, and finding the story. I found it, kept working on it, and then the process of started submitting, and then long story short, after a year or so of submitting, a little over a year of submitting, year and a half, couple years, I got a bite. I got Cardinal Rule Press actually emailed me back one day and said, "Hey, we love the book." And in fact, they said we haven't decided yet. You're in the final running for and I think they only publish 2 books a year because they're a small publisher. They've been around for a while. They're growing, but 2 books a year. So one of the editors, not the editor in chief, but one of the editors was like, "Hey, if you wanna, I really like your books. If you wanna, polish it, revise it a couple more, and then resubmit it, you're more than welcome." So I was like, "Yeah." So I definitely made sure that the book was as best as it could be, and then resubmitted. And then they came back and said, let's do it. We're gonna publish it. So that's how that happened. And a year later is when it came out. During that time, of course, the process of working with an editor and all of that, which was a great, fun experience for me. And I will say that Cardinal Rule Press are small but mighty.
Aw.
And by that I mean, they really, really went above and beyond to make me feel like I was part of the team, part of the family. And as far as just the amount of time and energy that they invest in their authors and in community outreach. So their sort of mission statement is tied heavily to education and having an impact on children, on students. So a lot of their stuff can be tied to, a lot of their books are tied to, or all really, to core curriculum, as is mine, for example. And in fact, the subtitle for my book is Staying True to Yourself. Which is really what kind of the book is sort of about, because that's what the protagonist learns by the end of the book is, instead of just trying to be someone that he's not, to be himself. And I will share with you one of the last things I'll share with you about the book, and about how it came to be. As I said, it's very inspired by my parents' journey. In fact, there's parts of it that are inspired literally by like something that happened with my mom. In fact, how she herself, because of the cultural difference, she was shy. Also, obviously, because of her dialect, because she spoke Jamaican patois and she sounded different than all the other kids. And it wasn't until a teacher, a very nice teacher, one day decided to actually make an issue of it. And it ended up making things a lot better for her, and made her feel better, because he taught the class that my mom was speaking English, just a different version of it. But when I got so the story also is inspired by my dad as well. And in fact, there's without sort of giving it away, but a little bit of a spoiler alert in case you get the book. The book sort of culminates with an activity that the boy Raymond does with his dad, and it's based on a tradition, a family tradition that they have that surrounds baking. And more specifically, my dad, for example, every Christmas made Jamaican Christmas cake. And he didn't just make one; he made like literally like 8 or 9 or even 10 cakes, and he would send them out to family members every year. And he would prepare everything like months in advance. You have the fruits, and of course, this is Jamaican rum cake. So of course, so you're gonna have the fruits that have been soaking in rum for like 6 months. I mean, seriously. I mean, he was that kind of. So, and I would help him every Christmas as well, and it was kind of our tradition to help. Although I do remember, a lot of bowl licking on my part. I don't know how much I helped. So anyway, that's a big part of this story, and that was inspired by my dad. My dad's favorite bird is the cardinal. In fact, when the Mets played the Cardinals in the 1986, World Series, he was rooting for the Cardinals, and I was a kid, so I was kind of rooting for both, because like it's a New York team and it's the Cardinals, so I was just cheering whoever, no matter what. But when I got the call from Cardinal Rule Press, and their logo has a cardinal, I mean, literally, it was just. And my dad had passed away in 2013, so for me, I really felt that that he in spirit form, however, that he had something to do, a lot to do with how this came about.
That's really powerful and inspiring. I love signs like that come to us as we're doing our work, that tell us that we're on the right path, right? So as the child of Jamaican immigrants, I know you said there's like a little bit of like the thought of your mom in the story. How much of you is in the story? Did you feel a divide between your American self and your Jamaican family self growing up in school? What was that like for you?
No, not at all. No, maybe. So my experience, I do have some child experience that is factored into the story, which I will share. But to talk just for a second about my own, general experience as a child growing up in Queens, New York, and I went to a Catholic elementary school and then high school, an all-boys high school. No, I mean, granted, yeah, I dealt with, the normal, I think, childhood, social, anxieties and things like that. I think there weren't that many kids of color. And when I say kids of color, I mean in general. However, I was also going to school at the time in New York when there was the beginning of a huge immigrant wave in the late 70s, early 80s. So people like my parents, people from Jamaica, I was going to school with kids like my circle, my group, we had, Puerto Rican, we had Filipino, Dominican Republic, Aniel from India. Then of course, Vinny Poser from, whose family is Italian, and Michael Fitzpatrick, and he's Irish, and majority of the neighborhood was Irish and Italian. But for the most part, it was still a minority of kids of color. There weren't that many yet. Now it's majority, people of color. It's mostly Indian, in fact. East Indian as opposed to West Indian, because as you know, West Indians is actually Jamaicans, but East Indians the actual from India. But yeah, I will say that yes, there were times where what I experienced was what I would call the Spike Lee New York in moments. Had some, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, in some Spike Lee moments in as opposed to the Woody Allen version of New York. In Spike Lee's version, people are real. And so, I ain't gonna lie. Yes, did I hear, some N-word jokes? Did I hear some casual racism happen within the schoolyard sometimes? Yeah, and it was disconcerting, especially because I'm a kid and I don't know anything, But like I said, those incidences were isolated in the sense that, for me, there wasn't a through line of, oh, okay, this is gonna really affect me in any way, where it became like a thing. It was never that. I was fortunate in that way. I mean, I had friends and so forth. And if anything, the high school dynamic obviously changed a little bit. But yeah, to speak to your point, going back to the book, so the one true thing that I can say that it actually happened to me that became a part of the story, again, spoiler alert, is there's an incident where the boy Raymond wants to get fashionable like jeans, and at the mall, but of course, and these are fashionably ripped jeans, and so he's like, well, I can do it myself. So he's at home and and he's got a pair of scissors and a pair of jeans. And they look nothing, of course, obviously like the mall. They're all ripped up and just the cuts are too big and everything. And of course, his mom, is like, "Those are the jeans I bought you, aren't they?" Yeah, okay. And so she hands him a needle and thread. So so the truth behind that, the true story behind that, is that my mom bought me a denim jacket one year for the beginning of school. It was a 7th grade, really nice jacket. But the first week of school, I'm seeing this kid with like the sleeves cut off, and his just looks totally cooler. And I'm like, I want to do it like that. So I actually, I didn't use scissors. I actually used a straight razor. So if there's any kids, please don't ever touch a straight razor unless with supervision. Otherwise, just don't. Use scissors always, and even if they're sharp, still be careful. Okay, now we said the PSA.
And maybe don't cut off the sleeves of your mom's.
Well, yeah, definitely not anything that your parents buy you don't want to alter in any way, because when I did that, I ruined it. I basically, just like Raymond in the book. I mean, the sleeves. In fact, one was so cut off that it was like by threads. It was hanging off. It was literally like most of the shoulder was gone. It was nightmare. And she took one look at it when I tried to sneak out the house. Of course, she saw me, and she just looked at me, and she didn't yell. She just like in again the mom in the book. She just kind of coolly looked at me and was like, "I am never buying you another piece of clothing again." Which she did later on, years later. But at the time, I think she did mean it. So.
I love your protagonist, Raymond. He's trying so hard to be the best American ever, and the kids are looking at him like, what is going on here? He's trying to have the fashion and the language, and it doesn't fly until he just is himself, and everyone's fascinated by him and his culture and wants to learn and be a part of that. And I love that. I also love how you and Cardinal have included like a guide in the beginning of the book. Sometimes you see them in the end, and people may never get to them, caregivers or teachers, but you have questions that you can ask before you read the book or discuss, and questions during the book. But I think my favorite part is that you have the recipe, right, in the book for the Christmas cake. Doesn't have rum in it though, does it?
Well, no, because
That one
again, it's
doesn't,
obviously
right,
for kids and
But you
so,
can add rum.
but you yes, so for the adults, and if you want it to be authentic, I mean, you should. If you're an adult, then yes. But yeah, and to speak to your point about the book, about the forward, and there's back matter as well. That's all because of Cardinal Rule of Press. As I said, their mission statement is about education. So for them, they really wanted to make sure that that this is a book that can be used in the classroom. Where in fact it comes with a teacher's guide. I mean, it's like a 20-page teacher's guide that really goes into further detail about asking kids or having them do activities related to themes and that they can explore from the book. So yeah, I love the fact that that's all in there. And my dad's recipe, which by the way, I mean, you can find, at this point, because I did too, plenty of recipes online for Jamaican Christmas cake, and I invite you to check those out too. You can check out the one in my book, but if you do, please do not put in allspice. I accidentally, I don't know how it got past me, but it did. So there is no allspice in Jamaican Christmas cake, so don't put any there. Otherwise, everything else on the recipe list is good.
Okay, so I'm wondering, because wow, how many storytelling forms have we got here? We've got acting, we got the music, we got filmmaking, just out of and stage,
radio,
painting is
yeah,
radio.
True Renaissance man here. So how do these other storytelling forms inform your picture books, having told stories in all these other ways?
That's a great question, which makes me kind of think, like what would, well, I mean, I know that when I do, try to start any story, no matter the format or the way it's going to take place, I try to make it, of course, as organic as possible as far as how a story comes about, and it's only after the fact, to be honest, that I look back that I'll go, oh wow, okay, so this, in a way, like for example, there may be, and I've done this where I write one particular thing, or it's a song and it's about this, and then I write a story, or let's say I'm writing a book or writing a stage play, and then I find some theme that might have been maybe touched on there, or a character that has one scene there. All of a sudden somebody else has, like there's a homeless guy that is in a short film that ended up becoming a major character in a screenplay. It's that type of thing. And so that will happen sometimes for me, where I'll realize, oh wow, okay. And then sometimes I go, okay, well, I don't want to, obviously, be necessarily repeating beats or repeating the same or exploring the same, area in two different, projects. But sometimes, I think there's just an after the fact, maybe subconscious, thing, because I don't really consciously think about, how everything else maybe will affect one other thing. But things can be related. So for example, case in point, in this last year since It'll Be Irie has been out, I've written a children's musical based on the book.
fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm very excited about it. It's my first musical. I've never written a musical before, and I've written music, I've written songs, but I've never written musical songs. So I, last year, and I didn't even know how to start. I remember when I had the idea, and for the first couple of months, I was like, I want to do this thing, and I don't know how to start it. And I knew it was going to be inspired by the book. So that was a conscious, like, okay, I've got a picture book, and I'm trying to do this other thing. How is this going to relate to that? Because they're going to be related, but obviously it's going to be its own animal. And so, for example, the story in the musical is a lot more developed. And basically, the storybook became the springboard, for that. So Raymond is not only, very gung-ho about going to America, he's also the smartest kid in his class, class, and he also is this factoid kid who spits out like tons of like information. Like he loves just looking things up. He loves like that. That's his whole thing. And so his friends, he's like the brainiac of the group, because so that it was fun exploring his character and expanding that. And then, of course, expanding the other characters too in the book, his parents, his friends at school. Whereas in the storybook, in the picture book, they don't really have names. You see the illustration of him with the new kids at school, or I don't even think there's an illustration of him in his school in Jamaica. But in the musical, he's got friends, and they've all got names, and they've got personalities too. And then the kids in America have names, and they've got personalities too. So that was very interesting process of consciously looking at something in a different format and saying, okay, how is it going to translate? How is it going to relate? How is it going to be different in this new format, in this new thing where it's a sort of different story, but it's related?
I can't wait to see that. And you know what I'm thinking? You're going to have to make a lot of Christmas cake for the concession stand, because I'm going to be expecting a piece.
So she's doing that right now.
All right, I have another question that's not on here, because you just inspired me to ask some other questions.
Shoot.
You throw yourself into a lot of different projects in a lot of different ways. I have spoken with a lot of pre-published authors or aspiring authors who almost seem to be like, can I write this? Can I write that? Should I write this? I really want to write this, but nobody really knows that much about my culture, and they're not going to want to read about this. I actually heard that from a student whose family was from the Ukraine. So what would you say to someone who says, I want to write this book of my heart, this children's book of my heart, but I don't know, should I? They're looking for permission. What would you say to them?
Emphatically, yes, write that book, write the story. I'm going to share with you something that I recently came across. An 80s rapper, and I apologize because I can't remember who it was exactly, but he was in a video talking to other aspiring artists, and he said, you want to, it's going to sound like it's a little morbid, but it's not what I'm about to say. Eventually, you want to get to a point where in your life, if you're looking at your life as an artist, you're going to want to die empty. And what that means is, like, you want to get all your art out of you and share it with the world. You don't want to leave this, you don't want to be done with your life adventure with stories still inside of you. Because A, it'll make you sick. And I mean that actually, like, it can be in a literal way. Yeah, you don't want to be unfulfilled. You don't want to be wondering, 20 years later, oh, I should have. No. Get it, do it. If you have a story, if you have something you want to share, someone's going to want to read it. Someone's going to want to, trust me, there's 8 billion people on this planet. There's tons of books, right? You go to a library, how many books are there, right? Well, I'm not going to read them all, but that's not the point. The point is that there's somebody out there for each book. Somebody's going to read your book and really connect with it and really be thankful that you wrote it. So yes, you want to put it out there. It doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter what it's about. That's another thing. Yes, I'm going to say this. It really doesn't matter what it's about. And by that, I just mean that you write about what you care about, what you're passionate about, the story that you're coming up with. And you have to love it first. As an artist, I do believe that when we create art, we have to have that connection first. We have to say, yeah, I'm feeling something with this. This is something. So, it's got to come from you, and you've got to love it. And then if you do, trust me, there will be somebody out there. And the last thing I will say